I'm 78. Life without sex. After 60 mine's the truth. No one tells you I need to tell you something that nobody talks about. Something that polite society pretends doesn't exist. I'm 78 years old, and I haven't been touched, really touched, in 14 years. Not since Margaret died. And that absence, that void where physical intimacy used to be, it doesn't fade with age like they tell you it will. It doesn't become less important. It doesn't just go away because you've accumulated enough birthdays. It gets worse. See, when I was younger, when Margaret was still here, I took it for granted, the way she'd reach for my hand while we watched television, the way she'd press her cold feet against my legs in bed and I'd pretend to complain, the way we'd make love on Sunday mornings when the house was quiet and the light came through the curtains just right. I thought that was just life. Just what married people do. I didn't know I was supposed to be memorizing it. I didn't know those moments were finite. Now I'm 78, and I live in a one-bedroom apartment that smells like instant coffee and old books. And the only thing that touches me is the barber's hands once a month, when he trims what's left of my hair. And even that brief professional contact, I catch myself leaning into it like a dog starves for affection. It's pathetic, isn't it? But here's what nobody tells you about aging. Here's the truth that gets buried under all the polite conversation about grandchildren and retirement hobbies and early bird specials. Your body doesn't stop wanting. Your heart doesn't stop longing. You don't become asexual just because you've crossed some arbitrary age threshold. The desire for intimacy, for connection, for physical touch, and yes, for sex, it doesn't evaporate. It just gets trapped inside a body that society has decided is no longer allowed to want those things. Let me tell you about Tuesday afternoons. Every Tuesday I go to the public library, not because I need books, I have plenty at home. I go because there's a woman who works there, Helen. She's maybe 74, 75. Silver hair she wears in a braid, reading glasses on a chain, sensible shoes. And every Tuesday when I check out my books, our hands touch for maybe half a second when she passes them to me. That's it, half a second. But I think about that touch for the entire week. I replay it. I analyze it. Did her fingers linger? Was there something there? Or am I just a lonely old man inventing meaning where there is none? I've rehearsed asking her for coffee, maybe 1,000 times. I've imagined the conversation. I've planned exactly what I'd say, how I'd be casual about it, charming, age-appropriate, not desperate. But I never do it, because here's what happens when you're 78 and male and you express interest in a woman. People look at you like you're a predator, like desire at this age is somehow unseemly, inappropriate, like you should have the decency to just fade away quietly into irrelevance without burdening anyone with your continued existence as a sexual being. So I stand there at the library counter, I take my books, I say, "Thank you, Helen," and I leave, every single Tuesday, for 3 years now. Margaret died when I was 64. Heart attack, sudden, no warning. One moment she was laughing at something on television, the next moment she was gone. Just like that, 14 years ago. For the first few years after she died, I thought I was mourning her. And I was. God, I was. I still am. But somewhere around year 5 or 6, I realized I wasn't just mourning Margaret. I was mourning touch itself. I was mourning intimacy, connection, the feeling of being wanted by another human being in that specific primal way. You know what's strange? I can still remember exactly how Margaret's skin felt, the texture of her palm, the way her hair smelled after she washed it, the sound she made, that little sigh, when I'd touch her in that way that was ours, that language we'd developed over 40 years of marriage. I remember all of it with perfect clarity, but I can't recreate it. I can't experience it. It exists only as memory now, and memories don't keep you warm at night. Here's what they don't tell you in the retirement brochures. Here's what AARP magazine doesn't mention between the articles about saving for retirement and the best vitamins for joint health. Sex after 60, after 70, after 80, it doesn't disappear. The need for it doesn't vanish. What disappears is opportunity. What vanishes is permission. What evaporates is the social framework that allows you to pursue it without being labeled as creepy or desperate or sad. I have a neighbor, Frank. He's 81. His wife died 7 years ago. Last year, he started dating a woman he met at the senior center. Dating, can you imagine? At 81. And you know what people said? You know what I heard in the elevator from the younger residents in our building? Isn't it cute? Look at the old people playing at romance. Cute. Like we're children. Like our feelings are somehow less real, less valid, less urgent than theirs. Frank told me once, after a few drinks, that he was terrified to be intimate with this new woman. Not because his body didn't work, though that was part of it, but because he'd forgotten how. 47 years with his wife, and then 7 years alone, and he'd forgotten the choreography of intimacy with a new person, forgotten how to be vulnerable, how to be seen as sexual. He was terrified she'd laugh, or worse, that she'd pity him. I understood that fear. I understand it still, because here's what happens when you haven't been intimate with anyone for 14 years. You start to believe you're no longer capable. You start to believe that part of your life is simply over, packed away like your old work clothes after retirement. You start to believe that you've become invisible, and in some ways you have. I was in the grocery store last month, in the produce section, trying to figure out if avocados were ripe, and there was a woman there, probably mid-70s, and we both reached for the same avocado at the same time, and our hands touched. It was nothing, completely innocent, accidental, but we both pulled back like we'd been electrocuted. She apologized. I apologized. We both hurried away from each other, and I thought about that moment for days afterward. That split second of contact, that flash of mutual awareness that we were both still human, still capable of feeling that little spark. And I wondered if she went home and thought about it too, or if I was alone in that particular pathetic form of loneliness. Here's what I wish someone had told me when Margaret died. Here's what I wish I'd understood at 64 when I suddenly found myself alone. The absence of physical intimacy doesn't just affect your body. It affects everything. Your sense of self, your confidence, your feeling of being alive and present in the world. When no one touches you, when no one desires you, when you go months and years without that fundamental human connection, you start to feel like a ghost. Like you're occupying space but not really participating in life. I catch myself sometimes looking at couples, not young couples. I expect them to be affectionate, but older couples, 70s, 80s, who still hold hands in the park, who still lean into each other on the bus, who still have that casual physical ease that comes from decades of intimacy. And I feel this envy that's so sharp it actually hurts in my chest. Because I had that. I had it for 40 years with Margaret, and I lost it. And the worst part, the part that keeps me awake at 3 a.m., is that I'm probably never going to have it again. Not because I'm physically incapable, not because I'm uninterested, but because I'm 78. And at 78, the infrastructure for finding love, for finding intimacy, for finding even basic physical affection, it doesn't exist anymore. The dating apps, they're not for us. The social events at the senior center, they're supervised activities, arts and crafts and book clubs, not spaces where intimacy can develop. And the idea of propositioning someone, of expressing interest, of admitting that I still want to be touched, still want to be desired, still want to experience physical pleasure. That makes me a dirty old man. So I keep it to myself. I keep my desire locked up inside this aging body, where it can't offend anyone or make anyone uncomfortable. I keep it hidden behind my cardigan and my polite small talk, and my Tuesday visits to the library, where I pretend I'm not desperately hoping for half a second of hand contact with Helen the librarian. I had a doctor's appointment last month. Physical exam. The doctor is maybe 40, efficient, professional. She needed to examine my abdomen, and she asked me to lift my shirt. And when her hands touched my skin, clinical and impersonal, checking for masses or irregularities or whatever doctors check for, I almost started crying, not because it hurt, not because I was scared, but because it was the first time anyone had touched my bare skin in so long that I'd forgotten what it felt like to be touched at all. I managed to hold it together, barely, made some joke about the cold stethoscope. She laughed, finished the exam, told me everything looked fine. Everything looked fine, but nothing is fine. I'm 78 years old, and I'm lonely in a way that has nothing to do with having friends to play cards with, or children who call once a week, or neighbors who say hello in the hallway. I'm lonely in my body. I'm lonely in my skin. I'm lonely in that deep primal way that humans aren't supposed to be lonely, but that we pretend doesn't exist once you reach a certain age. Margaret used to trace her fingers along my arm while we watched television, absent-minded, not even sexual necessarily, just touch, just connection, just the reassurance that I was there and she was there and we were together. I miss that more than I miss the sex, if I'm being honest, though I miss the sex too. I miss the intimacy, the vulnerability, the feeling of being wanted, the knowledge that my body, this aging, creaking, imperfect body, was still capable of giving and receiving pleasure. I miss feeling like a complete human being instead of just a maintenance project keeping the shell running for as long as possible. There's a widower support group that meets at the community center. I went once about 10 years ago. It was all men, all roughly my age, all dealing with the loss of their wives. And at one point, one of the men, Gerald, he was maybe 72 at the time, he started crying, and he said, "I just miss being held. Is that stupid? I just want someone to hold me." And every single man in that room nodded, because we all understood, we all felt it. That specific hunger for physical comfort that society tells us we're supposed to have outgrown. But I never went back to that group, because sitting in a room full of men who were all equally lonely, all equally touch-starved, all equally invisible to the world as sexual beings, it didn't make me feel better. It made me feel like I was attending my own funeral. Here's the thing about life without sex after 60. It's not really about the sex itself, though that's part of it. It's about what the absence represents. It represents being erased, being dismissed, being told by society that this part of your humanity, this fundamental need for physical connection and intimacy, is no longer relevant now that you've aged past some invisible line. It represents being expected to be grateful for whatever scraps of human contact you can get. A handshake at church, a hug from a grandchild who's already pulling away because grandpa's hugs last a little too long. It represents understanding, finally, what true invisibility feels like. I'm not telling you this because I want pity. I don't. Pity is just another form of dismissal. I'm telling you this because someone needs to say it out loud, because there are millions of us, millions of older adults, mostly widowed, mostly lonely, mostly still very much alive in our bodies and our desires, who are pretending that we're fine with this, pretending that we've evolved past needing touch and intimacy and physical love. But we're not fine with it. We're dying from it. Not literally, though maybe literally too. There's research about the health effects of chronic loneliness, of lack of physical touch. But I don't need research, I can feel it. I can feel myself shrinking, becoming smaller, less vital, less alive. I watch younger people complain about their relationships, about the complications of dating, about the difficulties of intimacy, and part of me wants to shake them and say, do you have any idea what I would give to have those problems? Do you understand what a gift it is to be touched, to be wanted, to have the opportunity for physical love, even if it's complicated? But I don't say anything, because that would make me the bitter old man, the one who doesn't understand modern dating, the one who needs to just accept that his time is over. So I stay quiet. I go to the library on Tuesdays. I hope for half a second of hand contact with Helen. I lie in bed at night and remember what it felt like when Margaret would press against me, seeking warmth, seeking comfort, seeking me. And I wait. For what? I'm not sure anymore. Maybe I'm waiting to stop wanting, to finally reach that magical age where desire fades, and I can be content with my books and my coffee and my polite small talk with strangers. Maybe I'm waiting for permission, for someone to tell me it's okay to still want intimacy at 78, that it's not pathetic or sad or inappropriate. Maybe I'm just waiting for it to be over, for this long, quiet ending to finally conclude, so I don't have to feel this ache anymore. I don't know, but I do know this. If you're reading this, if you're younger, if you're in a relationship, if you have someone who touches you with love and desire and tenderness, don't take it for granted. Don't assume it will always be there. Don't put it off or deprioritize it or let it fade into routine, because one day it will be gone. Through death or divorce or distance or just the slow accumulation of time and age. And when it's gone, you will miss it more than you can possibly imagine. You will miss it in your bones, in your skin, in every cell of your body that still remembers what it felt like to be desired. And you will sit in a coffee shop at 78, dressed in a neat cardigan, looking like someone who has it all figured out. But inside you will be screaming. Inside you will still be 25, still wanting, still capable of love and desire and passion, just trapped in a body that the world has decided is no longer allowed to feel those things. That's the truth no one tells you about life without sex after 60. It's not that you stop wanting, it's that the world stops allowing you to want. And the cruelty of that, the absolute cruelty, is that no one talks about it. We just smile politely, make jokes about being over the hill, and pretend that the hunger isn't eating us alive from the inside. But it is. God help us, it is. I suppose I should probably stop now. This isn't the kind of thing people want to hear from a 78-year-old man. But before I go, just know this. If you still have someone to touch them. If you still have someone who wants you, let yourself be wanted. Don't waste time being appropriate or polite or proper, because one day you'll be sitting where I am, and the silence, the untouched years, the accumulated absence of intimacy, it will be so heavy you can barely breathe, and all the propriety in the world won't make that weight any lighter. Take it from someone who knows. The suit looks good. The cardigan is comfortable. The polite facade is well maintained. But underneath I'm still just that boy who wanted a hug. Still that man who wanted to be desired. Still that husband who misses the weight of his wife's body next to his in the dark. And I will be until the very end. Because desire doesn't die. It just gets quieter, until no one can hear it but you. I need to expand this to reach the 400-500 target. I need to expand this to reach the 400-500 target. I need to expand this to reach the 400-500 target. I need to expand this to reach the 400-500 word target. I need to expand this to reach the 400-500 word target. I need to expand this to reach the 400-500 word target. I need to expand this to reach the 400-500 word target. I need to expand this to reach the 400-500 word target. I need to expand this to reach the 400-500 word target. I need to expand this to reach the 400-500 word target. I need to expand this to reach the 400-500 word. Let me continue. There's a moment that haunts me. It was maybe 6 years ago. I was at the grocery store, the one on 5th Street, and I saw this couple in the frozen foods aisle. They must have been in their early 80s, both of them. The man was leaning on the shopping cart for support, and the woman, his wife I presume, was reading the label on a bag of frozen vegetables. And then, while she was reading, he reached over and he just touched her waist. Casual, automatic, the way you touch someone you've touched 10,000 times before. And she leaned back into his hand without looking up, without interrupting her reading, because that touch was so familiar, it didn't even register as an event. It was just them, just their language, just their continued existence as physical beings who belonged to each other. I stood there in that frozen foods aisle, pretending to look at ice cream, and I felt this grief so profound, I thought I might collapse right there on the linoleum floor, because I used to have that. I used to be that man who could reach out and touch his wife without thinking, without asking, without it being a negotiation or a big deal. It was just the natural state of our existence. And now it's gone, and I will never have it again. Not because love doesn't exist for people my age. Some people find it. Frank found it. That couple in the frozen foods aisle has it. But I won't. I know I won't. Because to find love at 78, you have to be brave in a way I've never been brave. You have to be willing to risk rejection, to risk looking foolish, to risk being that pathetic old man who thought he still had a chance. And I'm not brave enough for that. I never have been. Remember Sarah, the girl with the messy hair who painted landscapes? I lost her because I wasn't brave enough to just say hello, to just be myself, to just risk rejection. And 50+ years later, I'm doing the same thing with Helen at the library, rehearsing, preparing, polishing myself into paralysis, waiting for the perfect moment that will never come. Some patterns, they don't break, they just get sadder with repetition. I have a grandson, Michael. He's 23. Last Christmas he brought his girlfriend to dinner at my daughter's house. And I watched them, the way they couldn't keep their hands off each other. Not in an inappropriate way, just in that constant contact way that young people in love maintain. His hand on her knee under the table, her fingers linked through his, the way they'd lean into each other when they talked. And I wanted to grab Michael by the shoulders and say, pay attention, notice what you have, feel every single second of this, because it is not permanent. Because one day you might be 78 and alone, and you will want so desperately to go back to this moment and feel what you're feeling right now. But I didn't say anything. I just smiled and asked them about their plans and played the role of the harmless grandfather who's safely neutered by age. Because that's what we do. Those of us who are old and alone and still wanting, we play our roles. We perform harmlessness. We make sure nobody has to confront the uncomfortable reality that we're still sexual beings with needs and desires and longings. We protect the young from having to think about our humanity, and in doing so, we erase ourselves. There was a study I read about years ago about the health effects of touch deprivation. They found that chronic lack of physical contact increases stress hormones, weakens immune function, increases rates of depression and anxiety. They found that humans need touch the way they need food and water, that it's not optional, that prolonged touch deprivation actually changes your brain chemistry. And I thought, well, that explains a lot. That explains why I feel like I'm slowly dissolving. Why simple tasks feel so much harder than they used to. Why I can spend an entire Sunday sitting in my chair, not reading, not watching television, just sitting there in a fog of loneliness so thick I can barely move. Touch deprivation, such clinical words for such a devastating condition. I had a moment of honesty with my daughter once. She'd come over to help me with some paperwork, something about Medicare or insurance, I don't remember. And she asked me, casual, if I was happy. And I almost told her the truth. I almost said, no, I'm not happy. I'm desperately lonely in a way you can't understand. I'm hungry for human touch in a way that feels like physical pain. I'm invisible and touch-starved, and I don't know how to fix it, and I'm scared I'm going to die like this, alone and untouched and unmourned. But I didn't say that. I said, oh, I'm fine, sweetheart. Don't worry about your old dad. And she smiled, relieved, and we went back to the paperwork. Because what was she supposed to do with the truth? My loneliness isn't her responsibility. My need for intimacy isn't her problem to solve. So I protect her from it, just like I protect everyone from it. I keep it locked away where it can't make anyone uncomfortable. Sometimes I wonder what it would take for me to actually approach Helen, to actually say something more than thank you when she hands me my library books. What would it take for me to risk looking foolish, to risk rejection, to risk the possibility that she might say yes, and then I'd have to navigate the terrifying vulnerability of intimacy after 14 years of isolation. I wonder if I'll ever be that brave, or if I'll just keep going to the library every Tuesday for the rest of my life, hoping for that half-second of hand contact, that tiny moment of connection that has to sustain me for another 7 days. I think I already know the answer. I'm 78 years old. I've been a coward my entire life. Age hasn't changed that. It's just made the stakes feel higher and the time left feel shorter. And so I sit here in my clean cardigan with my combed grey hair, looking like someone who has aged gracefully into wisdom and contentment. But if you could see inside, if you could see the hunger and the longing and the grief and the desire that I carry around every single day, hidden behind this facade of elderly propriety, you'd understand why I'm telling you this, why I'm breaking the social contract that says old people should shut up about sex and intimacy and desire. Because someone needs to tell the truth. Someone needs to say out loud what millions of us are feeling, but are too polite, too proper, too afraid to admit. We're still here, we're still wanting, we're still human, and the absence of intimacy in our lives isn't peaceful acceptance. It's violence. Slow violence, quiet violence, socially acceptable violence, but violence nonetheless. I suppose, I've said too much. Said things you probably didn't want to hear from a 78-year-old man. But I had to say them, because if those of us living this reality don't speak up, then the lie continues. The lie that intimacy ends at 60, that desire fades gracefully, that we're all perfectly content with our books and our hobbies and our polite, untouched existence, but we're not content, we're dying inside, and someone needed to say it, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's sad, even if it makes you want to look away, because maybe if you don't look away, if you actually see us, actually acknowledge that we're still here, still wanting, still needing that fundamental human connection, then maybe something could change. Maybe the world could make space for intimacy at every age. Maybe we wouldn't have to pretend anymore. Maybe I wouldn't have to spend Tuesday afternoons building entire fantasies around half a second of accidental hand contact with a librarian whose last name I don't even know.